He couldn't believe his eyes when he saw his ex-fiancée on the street, with 3 children who looked just like him. For years, he continued his life ignoring what he had left behind, until fate rubbed the truth in his face. 3 boys identical to him were there beside the woman he had sworn to forget. She didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't ask for anything, she just walked away. But that scene was the beginning of a reckoning he could no longer postpone. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. We'll continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear in your life. Michael Anderson, at 42, was the perfect portrait of corporate success. From humble origins, he had built an impeccable career in the financial market. His penthouse apartment in one of Chicago's most expensive neighborhoods was filled with technology and comfort, but curiously empty of emotional memories. There were no family photographs, only certificates of professional achievements and artwork, acquired as investments. That September morning, Michael was driving his imported car to a decisive meeting. He was about to close an international deal that would consolidate him among the country's top executives. The traffic jam on Michigan Avenue irritated him, but he kept his calm thinking about the numbers he would present in less than an hour. It was there, amid spreadsheets and graphs, that he truly felt in control. Distracted by the incessant notifications on his cell phone, Michael almost didn't notice the female figure waiting on the sidewalk. It was as if time froze when his eyes met Sarah Mitchell's. He hadn't seen her in exactly 7.5 years. Her face still had that serenity that had always intrigued him, although new traces of fatigue were evident. Sarah wore simple clothes, but elegant in her own discreet way. However, it wasn't the sight of her that paralyzed him. It was the 3 small figures around her. 3 identical boys, approximately 7 years old, with colorful backpacks and school uniforms. 3 pairs of dark eyes, 3 smiles revealing baby teeth being replaced, and above all, 3 miniaturized versions of his own face. My children. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Michael felt his stomach sink and his hands tremble on the steering wheel. Without thinking twice, he abruptly parked in a no-parking zone and jumped out of the car. "Sarah!" he shouted, advancing. Through the congested sidewalk, she recognized him immediately. Her body reacted before she could process any thought. With an instinctive movement, she positioned herself between Michael and the boys, like a lioness protecting her cubs. "Mommy, who is that man?" asked one of the boys, the one wearing a blue shirt under his uniform. Sarah didn't answer. Her eyes, now cold in a way Michael had never seen, stared at him with a mixture of contempt and apprehension. There was no need for words. That look said everything. "You have no right after so much time." "We need to talk," Michael managed to say, his voice choked by emotion he didn't even know he could feel. "Please." "Our car has arrived, boys," Sarah responded, completely ignoring Michael as she pointed to a rideshare vehicle that had just stopped. "Let's go, we're already late for swimming class." The 3 boys, oblivious to the tension in the air, excitedly entered the car. Michael observed how different they were in their movements, despite their identical appearance. One seemed more cautious, another more agitated, the third more observant. He had the impression that this last one was studying him with curiosity. "Don't do this, Sarah," begged Michael, approaching the vehicle's door. "I have the right to—" "You gave up any right 7 years ago," she cut him off, with a low and firm voice so only he could hear. "When you said you didn't want responsibilities and that I should solve the problem on my own. Remember that." The words hit Michael like blades. Memories he had buried under layers of justification and rationalization emerged to the surface. The small apartment they shared while attending college, the plans that didn't include children, the panic he felt upon seeing the positive pregnancy test, the fierce argument, the cruel words he said, and finally, his choice. The international internship opportunity he accepted, leaving without looking back, blocking her number, ignoring emails, hiding in another continent until it was too late for any decision. "Please," was all he could say. Sarah got into the vehicle and closed the door. Through the window, the eyes of the 3 boys stared at him with the innocent curiosity of childhood. One of them waved timidly, perhaps out of politeness, perhaps from an inexplicable impulse. The car drove off, leaving Michael paralyzed on the busy sidewalk. People rushed past, some drivers honked at his poorly parked car, but he couldn't move. It was as if the entire universe he had carefully built for himself was crumbling around him. When he finally managed to return to the car, Michael realized he was shaking. He took his cell phone and, for the first time in his career, did something unthinkable. He cancelled the decisive meeting. Then, without thinking much about what he was doing, he programmed the GPS and discreetly followed the route that Sarah's vehicle had taken. The path led him to a middle-class neighborhood on the west side of the city. It wasn't a place of poverty, but neither did it have the luxury to which he was accustomed. Simple but well-maintained houses, trees on the sidewalks, children playing in small parks. He parked at a distance and observed when Sarah and the three boys disembarked in front of a community sports club. "Wait here," he told himself. "Just observe." For 2 hours he remained in the car waiting. He saw when they came out, the boys' hair still damp from swimming. He saw how Sarah adjusted jackets, tied shoelaces, checked backpacks. He saw the smiles, the small, childish arguments, the way one of them clung to her hand while the other two walked ahead, talking animatedly. It was a family. A complete family without him. When he returned to his apartment that night, Michael felt like a stranger in his own home. The spacious and impersonal rooms seemed to silently accuse him. He opened an expensive bottle of whiskey, served himself generously, but couldn't drink. Instead, he went to his office and opened a drawer he rarely visited. There, in an old folder, were the few memories he had kept from his relationship with Sarah. Photographs from a beach trip, movie tickets, small, handwritten notes. They were silent witnesses to a time when his priorities were different, before ambition and fear shaped his choices. In one of the photos, Sarah smiled, looking at him, not at the camera. Her eyes conveyed a love that Michael had considered suffocating at the time. Now, looking at the yellowed image, he wondered how he could have been so blind. That night, Michael didn't sleep. Sitting on the terrace of his penthouse, he observed the illuminated city, while trying to process the avalanche of emotions that dominated him. Guilt, regret, curiosity, and above all, an inexplicable feeling of emptiness that no professional achievement had managed to fill. At dawn, he made 2 decisions. First, hire a private investigator to discover everything about Sarah's and the boys' lives. Second, consult a lawyer specialized in family law. He didn't yet know what he would do with this information, but for the first time in years, he felt a purpose that went beyond corporate goals. "I have 3 sons," he said aloud, testing how the words sounded, and then, like a confession made to the first lights of day, "and I abandoned them even before they were born." A week passed. Michael had practically moved into his office, where he accumulated reports, photographs, and notes. His assistant, Denise, watched with concern the transformation of the always impeccable boss into the man with deep, dark circles, and Stubble, who now spent hours locked up, ignoring calls from important investors. The private investigator, August Matthews, was known for his discretion and efficiency. In a few days, he delivered a complete dossier on Sarah Mitchell and her children. Michael was reading it for the 3rd time when Denise entered without knocking. "Your lawyer is on the line. It's the 4th time he's called today." Michael nodded, distracted. The open folder showed photographs of the triplets at different moments at school, in a playground, leaving a small yellow house. How did she manage? He muttered to himself. How did she raise 3 children alone while May I come in? The voice of Maurice Carter, his personal lawyer for years, interrupted his thoughts. "Michael, you look terrible." "I discovered I have 3 children," he replied simply, pushing the dossier toward his friend. "Triplets, 7 years old." Maurice leafed through the material in silence, his expression changing from surprise to understanding. "Sarah Mitchell. The journalism student? I thought it ended before you went to London." "Not exactly." Michael ran his hands over his tired face. "She was pregnant. I ran away." The lawyer showed no judgment. After years of dealing with the darker aspects of human nature, few things surprised him. What do you intend to do now? I want to meet them, Michael hesitated, the words sounding strange in his mouth. I want to be their father. Maurice closed the folder, his face serious. This won't be simple. Legally, you abandoned the pregnant woman. There's no record of child support, assistance, or any contact in the last 7 years. A judge would consider this emotional and material abandonment. I can compensate financially. It's not just about money, Michael. We're talking about 3 children who grew up without a father, a mother who faced everything alone. Maurice pointed to the report. Have you read all this? Do you know what she went through? Michael lowered his eyes, shame burning his face. Yes, he had read it, and each page was like a dagger in his conscience. Sarah had faced a high-risk pregnancy. Triplets always represent complications, but in her case, there was forced bed rest from the 4th month. Even so, the delivery had to be performed as an emergency in the 7th month. One of the babies, Matthew, stayed in the hospital for almost 2 months. Another, Luke, was born with a fractured clavicle that required prolonged treatment. Only Tyler, the third, didn't present serious complications. And Sarah faced all this counting only on her elderly parents, who took turns in caregiving until they suffered a fatal home accident when the boys were 4 years old. Since then, an improvised support network had formed. The elderly neighbor, Mrs. Eleanor, some volunteers from the local church, and mainly Sarah's own determination. She finished college studying in the middle of the night, Michael murmured, recalling a detail from the report. She works as a freelancer for 3 different outlets, does translations on weekends, and still gives tutoring classes. And she never filed for child support against you, added Maurice. She could have done that at any time. Michael remained silent. The report also mentioned the debts Sarah had accumulated over the years. Small loans to cover medical emergencies, rent arrears, negotiated payments with the modest private school, where the boys studied with a partial scholarship. What should I do? He finally asked. Legally, I recommend caution. We can file for voluntary recognition of paternity, but we would need her cooperation. Forcing the judicial process would be traumatic for everyone, especially for the children. Michael nodded, absorbing the advice. And personally? He asked, his voice revealing a vulnerability that Maurice had never seen in his friend. Personally, the lawyer sighed. Take it slow, very slow. You can't just show up and demand a place in their lives. You need to earn that right. In the following weeks, Michael began to act discreetly. Through intermediaries, he paid off the debts Sarah had with local loan sharks, regularized the payment for the boys' school, and ensured that overdue bills were paid without her knowing the source. Simultaneously, he learned everything he could about his sons. He discovered that Matthew, the most introspective, was fascinated by dinosaurs and spent hours drawing prehistoric creatures. Luke, the middle one by minutes, showed talent for construction, transforming any available material into small gadgets. Tyler, the most expressive, had a remarkable musical sensitivity and protected his brothers like a small guardian. In his apartment, Michael began to accumulate books on late fatherhood, child development, and psychology. His office, previously decorated with impersonal contemporary art, now displayed maps of the dinosaur world, construction kits waiting to be assembled, and a small keyboard. One afternoon, discreetly parked near the school, Michael was observing the children leaving when he noticed a colorful poster. The school would organize a fundraising fair on the weekend, open to the community. It was the opportunity he had been waiting for. On Saturday, the schoolyard was transformed. Colorful. Booths offered food, crafts, and games, while a small stage hosted student performances. Michael, wearing simple clothes he would never wear in his professional environment, mingled with the crowd of parents and neighborhood residents. From a distance, he spotted Sarah helping organize a used book booth, and there they were. The 3 boys wearing numbered shirts to facilitate identification. Matthew 1 was methodically organizing books by subject. Luke 2 was fixing an unstable shelf. Tyler 3 was talking animatedly with everyone who approached, a true-born salesman. Michael felt his heart accelerate. He approached slowly, feigning interest in the displayed books. Tyler immediately came to assist him. Do you like adventure books, sir? We have many good ones here. The boy smiled, revealing a missing front tooth. They're just $10 each, and the money will help renovate our library. Actually, Michael responded, controlling his emotion, I really like dinosaurs. Do you have any books about that? Matthew, Tyler called his brother. There's a customer for your dinosaur books. The Shire boy approached, carefully carrying 3 illustrated volumes. These are very good, he said in a low voice, almost a whisper, but they're my favorites. I'm just lending them to the fair. They're not for sale. I understand, Michael smiled, crouching down to be at the boy's height. You must know a lot about dinosaurs then. Matthew's eyes lit up. I do. Did you know that Velociraptor actually had feathers, and that it was much smaller than they show in movies, and that... Sarah approached, interrupting her son's enthusiastic monologue. Her eyes met Michael's, and he could see the shock, followed by a defensive coldness. Boys, we need help with the sodas, she said, without looking away from Michael. Please go help Mrs. Eleanor. Reluctantly, especially Matthew, who rarely found someone interested in his lectures about dinosaurs, the boys moved away. What are you doing here? Sarah asked, her voice controlled but tense. I want to meet them, Michael responded with sincerity. Please, Sarah, I know I don't have the right to ask this, but... No, you don't, she cut him off, looking around to ensure no one was watching. Them. You disappeared, blocked my number, ignored all my emails. Do you know what I went through? I do, Michael answered, surprising her, and there aren't enough apologies in the world for what I did. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Sarah. I'm asking for a chance to do something right in life. She studied him for a moment, years of hurt visible in her eyes. Are you also behind the mysterious payments? The paid-off debts? The anonymous donations? To the school? Michael nodded. Money is easy, he responded. I'm trying to do more than that. A tense silence established between them, broken by announcements over the microphone. The musical presentation of the 3rd grade students would begin shortly. Tyler is going to perform, Sarah finally said. He has stage fright, but he insisted on participating anyway. As if it were a sign, the two headed to the small stage set up in the center of the yard. From a distance, Michael observed his most expressive son trembling slightly as he held a small guitar. The first notes came out, hesitant, almost inaudible. The boy seemed about to give up, looking nervously at the audience. Without thinking, Michael approached the stage. You can do it, he said loudly. Take a deep breath and imagine you're playing just for yourself. Tyler, surprised by the encouragement from the stranger, followed the advice. He breathed deeply, closed his eyes for a moment, and when he reopened them, he began to play with more confidence. His childish voice, still hesitant, gained strength throughout the song. When he finished, he was received with enthusiastic applause. Sarah observed the scene with an indecipherable expression. When Tyler came down from the stage, running to hug her, her gaze met Michael's again. Hours later, with the fair coming to an end, Michael was helping dismantle booths when Sarah approached. Thursday at 4 in the afternoon, Lincoln Park near the playground, she said, without preamble. 1 hour, no more than that. I will be present the entire time. If I notice anything that disturbs them, it's over. Understand? Michael nodded, feeling an emotion he couldn't name. Thank you, was all he could say. Don't do this for me, Sarah replied, her face serious. Do it for them. And Michael, don't hurt them. They've already grown up without a father. It's better to continue that way than to have one who appears and disappears whenever he pleases. He watched her walk away, joining her sons who were waving animatedly to the last visitors. For the first time in many years, Michael felt something. He had forgotten hope. Lincoln Park was particularly pleasant that Thursday afternoon. Children ran across the grass, couples walked hand in hand, and elderly people rested on benches under the generous shade of trees. Michael arrived half an hour before the agreed time. He wore jeans and a simple t-shirt, so different from the Italian suits he usually wore. In his hands he carried a bag with 3 small, carefully chosen presents. When he spotted Sarah approaching with the boys, he felt his stomach churn. It was a strange sensation for someone accustomed to conducting Meetings with billionaire investors without showing nervousness. Matthew, Luke, and Tyler walked beside their mother, curious about the reason for this unexpected visit to the park on a weekday. "Remember the gentleman we met at the school fair?" Sarah asked her sons as they approached. "He is a friend of Mummy's from a long time ago. His name is Michael. You're the man who likes dinosaurs," exclaimed Matthew, recognizing him immediately. "And who helped me with my presentation," added Tyler, less shy than his brother. Luke, the most observant, just studied him in silence, as if trying to solve a complex puzzle. "I brought something for you," said Michael, crouching down to be at the boy's height. "I hope you like them." Sarah nodded discreetly, authorizing them to accept the presents. The three opened the packages simultaneously, but with distinct approaches. Matthew unwrapped methodically, Luke tore the paper enthusiastically, and Tyler observed his brother's reactions before opening his. "A dinosaur encyclopedia with augmented reality," shouted Matthew, his eyes shining as he flipped through the pages. "A robotics kit for beginners." Luke was already opening the box, eager to explore the pieces. A mini portable keyboard. Tyler touched the keys softly, producing some notes. "How did you know I like music?" Michael exchanged a quick look with Sarah before answering. "I heard you play at the fair. You have natural talent." The first meeting went better than anyone could have expected. Sitting on a large blanket spread over the grass, the four talked about school games and interests. Michael listened attentively to each word, absorbing details about the lives of the sons he hadn't known. Sarah remained nearby, vigilant occasionally, intervening to clarify something or moderate the growing enthusiasm of the boys. When the agreed hour came to an end, Michael felt a pang of sadness. "We need to go," announced Sarah, checking her watch. "We have swimming class soon." "Can we see Michael again, Mom?" asked Luke, surprising everyone with his sudden interest. Sarah hesitated, studying the faces of her sons and then Michael's. "Maybe," she finally answered, "if he's not too busy." "I will never be too busy for you," affirmed Michael with sincerity. And for the first time, he saw a brief smile pass over Sarah's lips. In the following months, the meetings became regular. Every Thursday at the same time, Michael met the boys at the park. Over time, the visits extended to other activities: a trip to the zoo, an afternoon at the science museum, a picnic at the beach. Sarah always present, keeping enough distance to provide privacy, but close enough to intervene if necessary. In his apartment, Michael transformed one of the guest rooms into a space for children. He didn't decorate it completely, preferring to let the boys themselves choose how they wanted the environment. Around him, colleagues noticed the change. The relentless executive now religiously reserved Thursday afternoons, refused prolonged trips, and for the first time kept photographs on his office desk. 3 smiling faces in colorful frames. Meanwhile, through his lawyer, Michael established an investment fund for the boys' future studies without directly interfering with Sarah's financial autonomy. He knew she was too proud to accept direct help, so he found discreet ways to contribute, sponsoring programs at the school that benefited his sons, improving the facilities of the community club they frequented, ensuring they had access to opportunities that Sarah alone could not provide. During one of the visits, after 4 months of regular meetings, Michael proposed something different. "Can we make cookies at my house today?" he asked the boys. And to Sarah he added, "There's a spacious kitchen. It would be more comfortable than your small apartment." Sarah hesitated. It would be the first time she would enter Michael's world, the universe from which she had been excluded years ago. "Please, Mum," begged the triplets in unison, already imagining the culinary adventure. "All right," she finally agreed, "but we return before dark." Michael's apartment on the top floor of a luxurious building impressed the boys. They looked at everything with curiosity, from the panoramic elevator to the sophisticated environments. Sarah, however, maintained a neutral expression, as if determined not to show any reaction to the contrast between the life Michael led and the one she had built for their sons. In the spacious kitchen, with marble islands and professional equipment, Michael had already separated the ingredients for the cookies. Matthew took the responsibility of reading the recipe, which he did with the seriousness of a small scientist. Luke took charge of measuring the ingredients with scientific precision, and Tyler put on music to accompany the activity. Soon, the impeccable kitchen transformed into organized chaos. Flour scattered on the floor, dough stuck to small fingers, laughter echoing off walls that rarely witnessed such joy. Michael, with a stained apron and a smile he couldn't contain, helped model the cookies into shapes of dinosaurs, robots, and musical notes. Sarah observed the scene from the counter, where she pretended to read a magazine. Now and then her eyes met Michael's, and there was something different there. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of an understanding. When the cookies finally came out of the oven, exhaling a delicious aroma of vanilla and cinnamon, the boys celebrated as if they had conquered the world. Sitting at the dining room table, with cold milk served in colorful glasses that Michael had bought especially for the occasion, the scene seemed almost familiar. "This is the best cookie I've ever eaten in my life," declared Luke with crumbs around his mouth. "Because you helped make it," responded Michael, affectionately messing up his son's hair. At that moment, Tyler, always the most perceptive, asked the question that had been silently hovering in the air for months. "Michael, why do you look so much like us?" Time seemed to freeze. Sarah straightened in her chair, suddenly alert. Michael felt his heart race, looking at her for guidance. They hadn't discussed how or when to tell the truth to the boys. "That's a good question," Sarah finally responded, her voice calm but firm. "Michael isn't just a friend of Mommy's, he is your father," completed Michael, the words sounding at once strange and absolutely right on his lips. The three identical pairs of eyes widened, processing the information. Luke was the first to react. "But everyone has a father. Why were you never with us?" The question, so simple and direct, carried the weight of 7 years of absence. Michael felt his throat tighten. "Because I made a very big mistake," he answered with sincerity. "When I found out you were going to be born, I was afraid. I went to another country and didn't come back to help your mother. It was the biggest mistake of my life." Matthew, always analytical, asked, "You didn't want to be our father?" "It wasn't that," Michael felt his eyes water. "I didn't know how to be a father. I was scared and I was a coward. But when I saw you for the first time a few months ago, I immediately knew I wanted to be part of your lives. If you'll allow me." Tyler, the most sensitive, carefully observed his mother's reactions. "Are you still angry with him, Mommy?" he asked softly. Sarah took a deep breath before answering. "I was angry for a long time, but seeing how he has made an effort to get to know you, how he respects our rules and boundaries, I'm trying to let that anger go away. For you." A reflective silence took over the room, interrupted only by the distant sound of traffic below. It was Luke who broke the solemn moment. "Does this mean we can come make cookies more often?" The innocent question provoked laughter, relieving the tension. But the conversation opened a new chapter in their relationship. In the following weeks, the boys bombarded Michael with questions about his life, his family, why his eyes were the same as Matthew's, if his ability with numbers had been inherited by Luke, if his taste for music had any relation to Tyler's talent. Michael answered everything with honesty appropriate to their age, building bridges over the abyss of lost time. Sarah gradually allowed more flexibility in the meetings. The visits extended to alternate weekends, although she still supervised everything closely. During one of these weekends, Michael received a call that would again change the course of their lives. The New York headquarters of his company was offering a global leadership position, triple salary, extraordinary benefits, and the recognition he had always desired. The only condition, immediate relocation to the United States with a minimum 5-year contract. Years ago, Michael would have accepted without hesitation, packing his bags that very night. Now, looking at the 3 children playing in his living room, the decision was surprisingly easy. He declined the offer. When he told Sarah about his choice, during one of the rare moments when they spoke alone while the boys were distracted, he saw something change in her gaze. "You really declined?" she asked, incredulous. I thought your career was—" "It was," he interrupted her. "It's not anymore. Some things are irreplaceable, Sarah. I learned that too late, but I learned." That night, as he said goodbye to his sons, Michael noticed a drawing that Tyler had left on the table. 5 stick figures appeared holding hands, a woman, 3 identical children, and a taller man. Underneath, in childish letters, was written, "My family." Michael carefully placed the drawing in his wallet. It was more valuable than any contract or job offer he had ever received. 6 months had passed since Michael revealed he was the father of the triplets. The routine now included weekly dinners at his apartment, alternate weekends together, and his constant presence at school events. For the boys, the adaptation was surprisingly natural. Children have an extraordinary capacity to embrace changes when they come accompanied by genuine love. On an ordinary Wednesday, Michael was in a meeting when he received a call from Sarah. His heart froze upon hearing her normally controlled voice choked with tears. "We received an eviction notice," she explained between contained sobs. "The building was sold. We have 30 days to leave." "I'm coming over," Michael responded, immediately, cancelling all his appointments. When he arrived at the small apartment, he found Sarah sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers and a calculator. The boys were at school, unaware of the crisis that had befallen the family. "Rents have exploded in the neighborhood," she explained, showing real estate advertisements. "I can't find anything compatible with my budget that accommodates 4 people and is close to the school." Michael took a deep breath before making the proposal he had been considering for weeks. "Come live with me." Sarah raised her eyes, surprised and immediately defensive. "I don't need charity, Michael." "It's not charity," he responded calmly. "My apartment has 5 bedrooms. Only 1 is used. It's a waste of space and I miss them when they're not there." "It's too much proximity," she argued. "We're not a couple, it wouldn't work. We can establish clear rules, private spaces, and it would be temporary until you find something suitable." He paused before adding, "Think of the boys, Sarah. The change would be smaller, they wouldn't need to change schools." She remained silent, visibly torn between pride and practicality. "What if—" Michael hesitated before continuing. "What if I moved to the guest apartment in the same building? You would stay in the main apartment, have total privacy, but I would be nearby to help." The proposal was too generous to be refused, especially considering the well-being of the children. After days of deliberation and negotiation of terms, Sarah accepted, with strict conditions. They would maintain separate routines, she would continue working and supporting the daily expenses of the children, and the situation would be re-evaluated. After 6 months, the move occurred on a rainy weekend. Sarah's few pieces of furniture seemed small and out of place in the spacious area of Michael's apartment. He had discreetly moved to the guest unit on the floor below, leaving the main space completely for the family. The boys, however, were ecstatic. Each one gained his own room for the first time in life, which they could decorate according to their interests. Matthew's room soon filled with posters of dinosaurs and planets. Luke transformed his space into a small laboratory for experiments and constructions. Tyler installed an electronic keyboard and covered the walls with musical scores. Sarah brought elements that ensured continuity, quilts made by her grandmother, photo frames with memories of the boys' childhood, the small rituals they had established over the years. Gradually, Michael's sophisticated and impersonal apartment gained soul and human warmth. The new routine was established with gradual adjustments. Michael came up for breakfast, helped take the boys to school, and then went to work. Sarah maintained her freelance schedule and classes, now with more time and fewer logistical concerns. At night, Michael frequently had dinner with them, participating in homework and the moment of putting the boys to bed. It was during one of these nights that the fragile balance faced its first test. Matthew woke up with a high fever, complaining of a sore throat. Sarah, exhausted after a particularly difficult day, called Michael for help. "I'm very sleepy, Mommy," murmured the boy, his voice hoarse and fragile. Michael sat on the edge of the bed, applying cold compresses to his son's forehead, while Sarah prepared the medication. You know what my mother used to do when I was sick, Michael told him softly. She would tell me stories about constellations. She said that each star was a guardian that protected children during the night. Matthew smiled weakly, his eyes bright with fever. Can you tell me those stories? And so Michael spent the entire night beside his son, narrating legends about starry skies, ancient gods, and heroes who transformed into points of light. Sarah observed from the door, an indefinable emotion in her gaze. When the sun began to rise and Matthew finally fell asleep with the fever under control, she brought a cup of coffee for Michael. You didn't sleep, she stated. Neither did you, he responded, accepting the drink. Thank you, Sarah said simply, but her look communicated much more. In the following weeks, other small moments strengthened the bond that was forming. Luke faced adaptation problems at the new school to which he was transferred after the move. His classmates found him strange for his obsessive interest in mechanics and robotics. Michael intervened, talking with the teachers and organizing a science fair where Luke could demonstrate his talents, earning the respect of his classmates. Tyler suffered from recurring nightmares. On one of these nights, he instinctively looked for Michael, not Sarah, when he woke up frightened. Sitting on the living room sofa at 3 in the morning, Michael taught his son to transform fears into music, creating together a song against nightmares that soon became a nightly ritual. On a Sunday afternoon, while the boys played in the building's pool under Michael's supervision, Sarah took the opportunity to visit Mrs. Eleanor, the elderly neighbor who had helped so much during the difficult years. The lady, now living in a small apartment nearby, maintained frequent contact with the family. He seems to be making an effort, commented Mrs. Eleanor, observing the recent photographs of the boys that Sarah was showing. The little ones seem happy. They are, confirmed Sarah. Michael has been surprising. And you, dear? How is your heart in this whole story? Sarah hesitated before answering. Confused. I spent years building a life without him, protecting my children, being everything to them. Now you can share that burden, completed the lady. It's not easy, I know. Pride sometimes prevents us from accepting help, even when we need it. As she was saying goodbye, Sarah overheard a conversation that wasn't meant for her ears. Michael had brought the boys to also visit Mrs. Eleanor, without knowing Sarah would be there. Standing in the hallway, she heard when the neighbor asked him about his feelings. I don't want to take anyone's place, Michael responded in a low voice. Sarah built something incredible alone. The boys are extraordinary thanks to her. I just want to be present, do my part, even if late, not out of obligation, but because I finally understood what really matters in life. Those words, not rehearsed, not planned to convince, touched Sarah deeply. When they returned to the apartment that night, something had subtly changed between them. Winter arrived, bringing with it the end-of-year holidays. For the first time, the boys would have a Christmas with a complete family. Michael and Sarah worked together on the preparations, balancing traditions from both families. The tree was decorated with ornaments that mixed the old colored balls kept by Sarah and new ornaments chosen by the boys. On Christmas Eve, with the triplets finally asleep after the excitement of the night, Michael and Sarah remained in the living room contemplating the tree lights with glasses of wine. Do you remember our last Christmas together? He asked, breaking the comfortable silence that had established. At my parents' house, she responded, her eyes slightly misty with the memory. You were nervous because my father was strict. And your mother defended me. Michael smiled with the memory. She said I had potential. She was right, Sarah admitted. It just took a while to materialize. Michael approached cautiously, taking her hand in his. I can never compensate for the years I lost, Sarah, nor the suffering I caused, but I promise that from now on, I will be the father our children deserve. You already are, she responded, surprising them both with the sincerity of the statement. That night, there were no grand declarations or dramatic gestures, just a silent understanding that forgiveness, true and deep, was finally happening. It didn't erase the past, but it opened the way for a different future. The true transformation, however, came on an apparently ordinary day. A social worker, From the school had noticed Michael's growing presence in the boys' lives and, presuming it to be an irregular situation, anonymously moved a process for officialization of paternity. The judicial notification arrived in a formal envelope that Sarah opened during breakfast. Her face turned pale as she read the document. "What is it?" asked Michael, noticing her disturbance. "A paternity recognition process," she responded, pushing the paper in his direction. "Did you go to court behind my back?" "Of course not." Michael seemed genuinely shocked. "I would never do that without us talking first." "Then who?" The situation was clarified with a phone call to the school. The social worker, well-intentioned but hasty, confessed to having initiated the process upon noticing that the school documents didn't register a paternal presence. "I'll withdraw it immediately," guaranteed Michael, already contacting his lawyer. "This should be decided between us, in our own time." Days later, Sarah found a letter on her bed. In the 3 handwritten pages, Michael expressed his regret for the past, his gratitude for the second chance, and mainly, his commitment to the future. "I don't want legal rights if I haven't first earned the emotional right to be called father," said one excerpt. "The documents can wait. What can't wait is the certainty that you four are the center of my world now." 3 months later, it was Sarah who suggested the formalization. Not from external pressure or practical necessity, but because she felt the time had come. The ceremony happened in the same community space where everything had begun to change during the school fair. A simple celebration, with Mrs. Eleanor, some teachers, and close friends as witnesses. The boys, now 8 years old, actively participated in the organization. Matthew prepared a formal speech about the meaning of family, which he read with the seriousness of a small scientist. Luke built a gadget that released confetti at the appropriate moment. And Tyler composed a song that he played on the small keyboard, his childish voice singing about rebuilt bridges and new beginnings. At the end of the ceremony, while the guests enjoyed the cake prepared by Sarah, Tyler approached Michael and, without warning, said the words he had waited so long to hear. "Thank you for coming back, Dad." The simplicity of the moment contrasted with its depth. Michael hugged his son, tears flowing freely. Soon, Matthew and Luke joined the hug, forming a knot of arms and emotions. Sarah observed from a distance, her own heart finally healing from the scars of abandonment. That night, already at home, Michael contemplated the illuminated city from the terrace. Sarah approached, offering a cup of tea. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "About how I almost lost all this," he responded. "Honestly. About how I spent years accumulating things that meant nothing, while the real treasure was so close." "It's never too late to start over," she said, her hand finding his on the parapet. "You know what Matthew asked me today?" Michael smiled, remembering the conversation. "He wanted to know if we can have a dog now that we're a real family." Sarah laughed, a light and genuine sound that Michael realized he had missed during all those years. "And what did you answer?" "That we need to discuss it as a family, all together." The word family hung in the air between them, no longer as an abstract concept or a lost ideal, but as a tangible reality, built day after day with small gestures of love, patience, and forgiveness. The next morning during breakfast, the five sat at the table for the family meeting about the possible new four-legged member. While the boys passionately defended their preferences, Matthew wanted a large dog, Luke technically argued about hypoallergenic breeds, and Tyler was mainly concerned that it be a loving dog. Michael and Sarah exchanged complicit looks. It wasn't just about a pet. It was about decisions made together, about a shared future, about the certainty that love, when true, always finds a way to flourish, even in the most unlikely terrain. The story of Michael, Sarah, Matthew, Luke, and Tyler didn't end there. In fact, it was just beginning, with its complexities, challenges, and joys like every real family, but now founded not on perfection, but on the acceptance of imperfections, not on the absence of past mistakes, but on the courage to do differently in the present. And on that ordinary morning, as they discussed about fur sizes and dog names, the room filled with a silent certainty that a true home is not made of walls or addresses, but of hearts that choose daily to remain together. The end of the story. Dear listeners, we hope that Michael's and his family's journey has deeply touched your hearts. This story of redemption, second chances, and rebuilding reminds us that it's never too late to correct our mistakes and start over. To continue being moved by equally engaging narratives, we've prepared a special playlist with stories that explore family bonds in all their complexities. Find it here, clicking to the left of the screen. If this story awakened emotions in you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Every day we bring new stories that reveal the beauty of human relationships in their various forms.